Someone fell overboard! The shout ripped through the windy air and jazz music that filled the Serenity yacht. A sparkling champagne glass, just raised, slipped from a guest's hand, shattering on the polished wooden floor, reflecting the fading sunset. In an instant, the romantic, luxurious atmosphere of the anniversary party turned into suffocating chaos. Laughter and chatter abruptly ceased, replaced by panic and horrified screams. All eyes fixed on the side of the ship where a body had just plunged into the sea. Was it a sailor, a drunken guest, or someone pushed? Hundreds of questions flashed through the minds of the witnesses, but no one could ascertain anything. The dark ocean water swallowed the figure in a blink, leaving behind only small ripples and a chilling void. The splash, though small, felt like a knife cutting into the sudden silence, making the air even colder and more eerie. While everyone rushed to the railing, screaming and calling for rescue, jostling to look down at the dark sea in another corner of the deck, untouched by the bright lights, only faint moonlight flickering, Emily remained in her spot, as if completely detached from the world. Her fiery red silk dress clung to her body like a burning flame in the sea breeze, in stark contrast to her frightening stillness. She took a slow, almost savoring sip of wine, her eyes not on the sea, but directly on Lindsay, her best friend, trembling with shock and fear. Lindsay, with her disheveled platinum hair and dazed eyes, couldn't believe what had just happened. A feeling of horror welled up inside her, not just because of the shocking event unfolding, but also because of Emily's chilling whisper moments ago. She felt a shiver run down her spine, an invisible fear creeping into every fiber of her being. Emily slightly lowered her head, leaning close to Lindsay's ear, her voice a sharp whisper, enough to make Lindsay shiver, but also clear enough to reach Mark, who had just exited the nearby restroom. In that moment of chaos, sound was distorted, and his attention was at its peak. Soon, all his assets will be mine. Lindsay was stunned. Her eyes widened, staring at Emily. It was unclear if she was joking or had just confessed a cold-blooded plan, a horrifying truth that she was a part of. The strong sea wind carried coldness and the salty scent of the ocean, further intensifying Lindsay's shivers. She wanted to ask, to scream, but her throat felt constricted, unable to utter a word. The yacht's emergency alarm blared heartbreakingly. Mark, the owner of the yacht, was conversing with a group of guests on the opposite side of the deck when the incident occurred. His face went pale when the shout rang out. He was the first to rush to the railing, his eyes scanning every face, searching for someone in the chaotic crowd, but in vain. Fear was evident in his eyes, a primal and profound fear. There was no time for shock. Mark immediately turned to order the crew to lower the lifeboat. He ran frantically across the deck, his voice hurried and full of unease, like a cornered animal trying to salvage something invisible slipping from his grasp. While Mark was frantically directing, he happened to pass by the nearby restroom. The restroom door was slightly ajar, and he stepped out, his face still showing signs of panic. Mark's gaze suddenly froze when he caught sight of Emily and Lindsay standing in a secluded corner. He paused for a second, his eyes sweeping over the two women standing amidst the buzzing crowd, and an unreadable expression flashed across his face. Unclear if it was anger or suspicion, or just slight surprise. He quickly regained his composure, nodded politely, and then walked past them, heading towards his cabin. His mind still filled with the image of the shadow that had just plunged into the sea. And now, Emily's whisper too. Emily and Lindsay continued their conversation as if nothing had happened. But the corner of Emily's lips curved into a mysterious smile, almost invisible in the darkness, as if she were enjoying a play that had just begun. Upon entering his private cabin, Mark gently but decisively closed the door. A soft click, as if to separate himself from the chaos and prying eyes outside. The tense atmosphere on the deck seemed unable to reach here, but the silence in the cabin only made his anxiety more apparent. He walked directly to the wall-mounted TV, and with a familiar gesture, gently pressed a hidden button on the frame. The TV screen lit up, but instead of television channels, a small surveillance camera interface appeared, displaying angles from all over the yacht. The living room, corridors, and even Emily's private room. Next, Mark reached for the bedside lamp, carefully detaching the lampshade and retrieving a tiny microphone discreetly attached. He plugged it into a digital recording device. Mark sat down on the luxurious leather sofa, his body sinking deep into the soft cushions, but his mind found no rest. His eyes were glued to the tablet screen, where recorded video and audio clips from the past few days were playing. Emily's laughter, her discreet phone calls, every small gesture were meticulously examined by him. He rewound the recent segment, searching for details about the person who fell overboard. But there was nothing clear, just a mysterious blank space on the camera. Then he replayed the audio he had just inadvertently caught. Emily's voice talking to another woman on the phone, mentioning the plan and the right time, along with hints of a major change about to happen. The more he watched, the more he listened. A cold sensation crept into Mark's heart, slowly suffocating him, like a snake tightening its grip on its prey. He began to suspect Emily not just because of the sentence he had just heard, but of a larger, long-hatched conspiracy. Mark's face became tense, creased, deep wrinkles appearing on his forehead. The initial self-satisfaction of a wealthy man, accustomed to controlling everything, was slowly eroding under fear and suspicion. He muttered, his voice hoarse, just loud enough for himself to hear, like a curse. What does she want? What is she hiding? Is she involved in what just happened? Or is it just a damned coincidence? In Mark's mind, the image of Emily transformed from a beautiful, charming young wife into a mysterious, unpredictable phantom, a terrifying enemy he had never faced. He felt like he was trapped in an inescapable maze, and Emily was the architect of that maze. Meanwhile, Emily stood alone on her cabin balcony, the sea breeze gently caressing her hair and dress. She remained unfazed by the chaos. She took a sip of champagne, her eyes gazing distantly at the horizon where the sun had fully set, leaving behind a brilliant orange-purple streak that was now fading into the night. A mysterious smile played on her lips, not the bright smile of the party, but a satisfied, confident smile, as if she were savoring a sweet secret, controlling everything in the palm of her hand. She whispered softly, just loud enough for herself, and perhaps for the hidden devices in the room. Everything is going exactly as planned. Perfect. Even more dramatic than I thought. Mark will fall into the trap himself, and the recent incident is just a perfect start, an absolutely wonderful curtain raiser for our play. She felt a wave of power surge through her veins, a sense of impending victory. What Mark didn't know was that Emily held secrets he couldn't even imagine. The phrase, "Soon all his assets will be mine," could be just a joke or a chilling prophecy. Her motive remained a mystery, but it was clear that Mark's every action, every click to review the camera footage, Every moment of his suspicion seemed to be leading him down a path he hadn't foreseen. And the someone fell overboard incident. Was it a random event, or also part of a larger plan intended to divert attention and put Mark on the defensive from the very beginning? The answer still lay in the mysterious darkness of the ocean, waiting to be revealed. Dawn broke over the ocean, painting a strangely peaceful picture after the chaotic night. Golden morning sunlight streamed into Mark's cabin through the window, but that serenity was merely a thin veneer. Emily awoke in her cabin, a sense of unease creeping in when she didn't find Mark beside her as usual. She rushed to her husband's cabin. Her footsteps hurried on the soft velvet carpet. The heavy oak door was locked from the inside. She knocked repeatedly, her knocks echoing in the silent, dry, and hopeless corridor. There was no reply, only a terrifying silence swallowing every sound. A bad premonition arose within her, like a cold claw tightening around her heart. Emily began to scream for help, her voice breaking in feigned panic. "Mark! Mark! Where are you? Someone help me!" Her cries echoed, carrying a fear she wanted everyone to feel, while deep down, a satisfied smile subtly formed on her lips. She was performing a perfect play, and the first audience members had appeared. Emily's screams quickly shattered the morning's tranquility, drawing attention. Jake, a burly man with an expression of extreme anxiety, was the first to arrive, his heavy footsteps and the sound of his shoes hitting the dry wooden floor. Ava, Jake's wife, with golden hair and sharp eyes, followed closely behind, her face also showing shock, but with a hint of confusion in her eyes. Together they tried to break down the door, but in vain. The door remained as solid as a sturdy wall. Jake punched the door, the thudding sound echoing, expressing his helplessness and frustration. "Mark, are you in there?" he roared. Finally, a crew member, with a tense face and eyes showing clear fear, had to use a master key to open the door. Inside, the cabin was empty. The bed was untouched, the sheets flat, with no signs of struggle or commotion. The window was slightly ajar, the curtains gently swaying in the sea breeze, but there were no traces to suggest Mark had left that way. An empty suitcase lay haphazardly on the floor, clothes still in the closet. This strange disappearance left everyone stunned, utterly bewildered, a cold sensation enveloping the space, as if the very breath of death was exhaling upon them. Amidst the chaos, a young sailor, with a tense face and frightened eyes, approached Jake and Ava. He mumbled, his voice full of hesitation, as if trying to utter a terrible secret he didn't want to believe. "I saw Mrs. Emily leave Mr. Mark's cabin around 2:30 a.m. She didn't return to her own cabin immediately after that." This testimony was like a lightning bolt, tearing through the fog of confusion, sowing seeds of doubt in everyone's minds. All eyes immediately turned to Emily, who was trying to suppress her tears, her face as white as a sheet. She quickly made excuses, her voice weak and trembling, but her eyes still held a sharp edge. I just went to check if he was okay. He was already asleep, so I went back." But her words sounded weak, unconvincing, like a dry leaf trying to withstand a storm. A wave of suspicion began to spread through the air. Every gaze at Emily carried scrutiny, silent judgment. Emily felt those gazes, and a sense of satisfaction crept within her. Everything was going according to plan. Soon after, an emergency signal was broadcast. A Coast Guard patrol boat quickly approached the Serenity, cutting across the calm sea, leaving a white wake. Police officers boarded the ship, their faces grim, and began a preliminary investigation. They cordoned off Mark's cabin area, demanding that everyone remain on the yacht until the matter was clarified. The atmosphere on board became tense and suffocating, like an invisible cage tightening around everyone. Whispers began to spread. Everyone looked at each other with suspicious eyes, distrust slowly forming. Conversations were interrupted, glances avoided, and heavy sighs echoed here and there, signaling that a new psychological battle had begun. Ava, with a worried expression, pulled Lindsay aside and whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind, but full of urgency. "I think it might be related to Mark's new will. He just changed it last week, and I have a bad feeling about it." Lindsay flinched, her eyes fixed on Ava, her mind starting to piece together the scattered fragments. A new will? Why did Mark change it? And what did that mean for Emily? Or anyone else on the ship? A cold sensation ran down Lindsay's spine, signaling worse things to come, dark secrets about to be exposed. What no one knew, and no one noticed in the panic, was that Emily had secretly taken a tiny USB stick hidden at the bottom of Mark's bedside drawer. While everyone was rushing to the railing, and then the chaos of discovering Mark's disappearance, Emily took advantage of that moment. With astonishing quickness and a decisive hand, she reached into the bottom of the drawer, feeling the small object under her fingertips. A light flick, and the USB lay neatly in her palm. She slipped it into her dress pocket discreetly, leaving no trace. This USB contained a copy of Mark's important financial documents, along with some of his secret audio recordings about people on the yacht. Evidence Mark had collected to test everyone's loyalty. Emily not only witnessed Mark's disappearance, she actively cleaned up the remnants to ensure her plan didn't go off course, and to make Mark believe she was genuinely panicking. She acted quickly, precisely, like a ghost in the night, leaving no trace, and a small sense of triumph crept into her heart. With Mark's mysterious disappearance and the mounting suspicions, the Coast Guard's investigation expanded. Officers began taking detailed statements from every passenger and crew member, especially those closest to Mark. The atmosphere on the yacht grew heavier with distrust and tension. Everyone was considered a potential suspect. The daylight couldn't dispel the pervasive chill, and the whispers, low and hushed, felt like invisible knives cutting into their fragile trust. When summoned by the police to the temporary interrogation room on the ship, Ava, with red eyes and a trembling voice, confessed that she once had a deep romantic relationship with Mark. They were even engaged, once dreaming of a bright future. But Mark had brutally called off the engagement just a few months before the wedding, after suspecting her of infidelity due to a photo taken with an old friend. He was always suspicious, Ava said, her voice choked with emotion, and he could be very cruel when he felt betrayed. He ruined my life, made me a laughingstock among the elite. She didn't deny still harboring resentment towards Mark, a smoldering hatred within her, and admitted trying to speak with him privately last night. But without success, the pain and humiliation were still deeply etched in her eyes. Next, Jake recounted the bitter story of losing his passionate tech startup. Mark invested in my company, but it was a disguised debt. He forced me to sign over all my shares under terrible financial pressure, all because of a small error in the contract that he deliberately set up. Jake clenched his fist, his face filled with indignation. I lost everything, from my career to my honor. More than once, the thought of revenge on Mark, making him pay for what he did, crossed my mind. He made no attempt to hide his anger. It flared like a fire in his eyes. Luis, the yacht's talented chef, once owned a renowned restaurant in the city center. He recounted with a bitter expression, his voice heavy with disappointment. My restaurant went bankrupt due to a scandalous food safety lawsuit. Mark, as an important customer, exaggerated the incident, even adding fuel to the fire in the media, causing me to lose all my reputation and assets, losing my lifelong dream. Luis still held a deep bitterness about a shattered career, a wound that would never heal. He stared into space, as if reliving the collapse of his restaurant. When it was Lindsay's turn, she spoke reluctantly, her voice trembling slightly when mentioning the past. Mark and I had a romantic relationship many years ago. She explained that after their breakup, Mark blocked all communication, destroying her reputation in high society, simply because she disagreed with one of his shady business dealings. He treated me like an old toy, discarded without mercy, Lindsay said, her eyes welling up with tears. She admitted she was deeply hurt and enraged by being treated like a disposable item, a stain on her life. While the police thoroughly searched the yacht's wine cellar, Luis, with his knowledge of the wine bottle locations and the room's structure, was asked to assist. He carefully moved each precious wine bottle, meticulously checking every shelf, every smallest nook and cranny. Suddenly, at the bottom of an antique Bordeaux wine bottle, he felt something unusual. More carefully, Luis discovered a tiny, old USB stick, hidden discreetly at the bottom of the bottle, almost blending into the dark color of the glass. He could hardly believe his eyes, a shiver running down his spine. He handed it to the police, his eyes filled with curiosity and apprehension. Upon examination, this USB contained an audio recording. When the recording played, Mark's voice echoed coldly, full of contempt, making the air in the room thicken. "You're just an old, expired item. Don't even think about clinging to me anymore, Lindsay." Lindsay, standing nearby, heard these words and froze. Her face turned pale, her lips trembling, unable to speak. Tears began to stream down her face, painful memories of humiliation, of Mark's harsh words, rushing back like a flood. He said I was just an old item. She stammered, her voice breaking with pain and shame. She collapsed, unable to bear it any longer. The grim truth that everyone had a motive for wanting Mark to disappear was gradually being exposed. Amidst the chaos and conflicting testimonies, the discovery of the USB by Luis, containing the audio recording about Lindsay, elevated suspicion to a new level. It not only revealed a personal secret, but also sowed deep distrust among them. The group slowly looked at each other with meaningful glances, an invisible wall gradually being erected. They began to wonder, which of us truly wanted Mark to disappear? And is someone skillfully exploiting this chaos to achieve their own goals? The police investigation on the yacht continued, but everything seemed to be shrouded in mystery. Mark's disappearance remained a puzzle, and the testimonies of the witnesses only added to the complexity. Lindsay, who had some knowledge of electrical engineering, felt that something was amiss. She decided to check the yacht's electrical system herself, hoping to find a clue that the police might have overlooked. Her sharp eyes scanned every control panel, every tangled wire. Finally, she discovered a surprising truth. The main electrical system had been disconnected for a short period on the night Mark disappeared. "This isn't a normal malfunction," she muttered, her voice full of suspicion. "It seems there was an external intrusion, a deliberate act." When Lindsay announced this discovery in front of the police and passengers, Ava, with a tense expression and eyes showing clear fear, could no longer keep her secret. She confessed, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. but full of desperation. I did it. All eyes turned to her. Ava took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. I wanted to surprise Mark. I had arranged to meet him in the dining compartment at midnight. I wanted to talk to him privately, to try and mend our relationship. I still loved him. I still held on to the hope that Mark still had feelings for me and would divorce Emily to come back to me. She explained that she had thought cutting the power would create a more romantic atmosphere, a moment just for the two of them, where they could talk undisturbed. Her distress and regret were evident on her face, but there was also a strange determination. However, as Ava recounted her story, a small detail suddenly flashed in her memory, a piece she couldn't ignore. But I remember Emily was the one who borrowed the technical card from Luis that evening. She said it was to check the sound system for the party, preparing for her special performance. The police turned to Luis, who was standing nearby, his face hesitant. Luis, with a confused expression, confirmed it was true. Yes, Ms. Emily did borrow my card. She said she needed it to adjust the music, but I don't remember the exact time. He looked at Emily, who maintained a calm expression, and a sense of confusion was evident in his eyes. Luis's confirmation made Ava begin to feel a chill down her spine. A terrifying thought slowly formed in her mind, like a snake gradually tightening its grip on her heart. She looked at Emily, who still maintained a calm expression, even a slight smile, and a great suspicion began to creep in. No way, Ava thought, her internal voice trembling. She's manipulating everyone. She knew about my power cut in advance, and she used it to hide something, to create a perfect blind spot. Ava realized that she might just be a pawn in a much larger game, an unwitting tool in someone's hands. She felt used, and anger began to surge within her, mixed with fear. Night fell upon the yacht, bringing with it an eerie silence. Everyone was lost in their own thoughts, fragmented pieces of the truth gradually emerging, but only increasing the confusion. Suspicious glances passed between them, trust no longer present. Emily's incomprehensible calmness, along with Ava's confession and the detail about the technical card, had sown deep seeds of doubt in their minds. The atmosphere became heavy, filled with unanswered questions, unrevealed secrets, and a sense of unease that someone was silently pulling the strings of fate, controlling everything. The investigation continued on the Serenity yacht, but every new clue seemed only to increase the complexity and confusion. Mark's disappearance remained a mystery, and the conflicting testimonies of the witnesses had turned this luxurious yacht into a cage filled with suspicion. Luis, with his knowledge of the wine cellar's nooks and crannies, was asked by the police to assist further in re-examining the area, hoping to find anything unusual. He carefully moved each precious wine bottle, his eyes scanning every label, every curve of the glass bottle. Luis had always prided himself on his meticulousness. Suddenly, at the bottom of an antique Bordeaux wine bottle, he felt something unusual, a small, hard object, subtly attached to the bottle cap, almost blending into the dark color of the glass and the dust of time. He gently pried it with his fingertip, and a tiny micro-recording device, no bigger than a thumb, fell out. Luis could hardly believe his eyes. A shiver ran down his spine. This couldn't be an ordinary device. He handed it to the police, his eyes filled with curiosity and apprehension, mixed with a hint of fear. With the police's permission, the device was quickly plugged into a laptop. An audio recording began to play, making the air in the room thicken. Emily's voice echoed, clear and unmistakable. She was talking to someone named Claire, her voice low, calculating, and cold, as if reading a plan. "We're almost done. He'll collapse because of his own suspicious mind. Everything is going according to plan, Claire. No one can stop us." Ava and Lindsay, both present, heard every word clearly. Ava's face turned pale with shock, her eyes wide with horror and anger. She looked at Emily, who was standing not far away, with an incredulous gaze. "What is this?" Ava screamed, her voice breaking. "You? Who are you talking to? What is this? What have you done to Mark?" Lindsay also couldn't hide her panic and suspicion. This evidence was too clear, too direct. It was like a slap in the face to their long-held doubts. Emily, with a completely calm expression, even a slight smile, walked closer to the laptop. She listened to the recording again, as if enjoying a piece of music, a work of art of her own making. Then she turned to look at everyone, her eyes sparkling with confidence and defiance. Her voice was soft, but full of certainty, as if explaining the obvious. "Oh, that?" She chuckled, her laughter echoing in the tense silence, sounding jarring. "You're overreacting. That's just a dialogue from the movie script I'm writing. I'm testing the voice for the female lead character named Claire." She explained further, her eyes sweeping across each skeptical face. "I often try different dialogues to see if they sound natural. Claire is the name of the main antagonist in my script, a psychologically manipulative woman. You see, I've succeeded in creating such a terrifying character." Emily's explanation resonated, calm and frighteningly logical. Luis, who found the device, also felt confused. He couldn't believe this was just a coincidence, but he couldn't completely dismiss Emily's words either. Ava and Lindsay looked at each other, then back at Emily. They began to feel stuck, as if caught in a tangled mess of lies and half-truths. This incident not only failed to resolve their suspicions, but pushed them into a deeper state of bewilderment. Everyone was lost in their own thoughts, trying to piece together the scattered fragments. But everything seemed only to become more obscure. Suspicious glances passed between them, trust no longer present. The atmosphere became heavy, filled with unanswered questions, unrevealed secrets. Between them, an invisible wall of distrust was gradually being erected, leaving each person isolated in their own fear and confusion. After the incident of the recording device in the wine bottle, the atmosphere on the Serenity yacht became suffocatingly tense. Emily's explanation about the movie script sowed extreme confusion, plunging everyone into deep suspicion. Lindsay, in particular, couldn't escape the haunting feeling. Mark's cold voice in the old recording, along with Emily's terrifying composure, kept swirling in her mind. She didn't believe Emily's words, feeling as if she was trapped in a web of lies. A strong urge compelled her to seek the truth, even if it was a painful one. Lindsay returned to Mark's cabin, which had been searched by the police but still held hidden corners that hadn't been thoroughly illuminated. She began to search carefully and meticulously, more than ever before, every drawer, every tiny crevice. Her sharp eyes scanned every object, looking for anything that could shed light on the mystery. After many tense hours, as night fell, at the bottom of a secret drawer, cleverly disguised under the closet floor, her hand touched a stack of old parchment papers. Lindsay's heart pounded. It was a will. Lindsay opened it, her eyes quickly scanning the lines, and then she froze. This was a new will, signed by Mark, but the sole heir to all his assets was not Emily, but a strange name, Claire Linson. That name. It appeared again. It wasn't just a name in Emily's movie script. It was an entity, a shadow present in Mark's life. And now, it held all his assets. Lindsay was stunned, feeling as if a large ice block had just hit her chest. With the will in hand, Lindsay rushed to find Emily, her eyes full of interrogation and a hint of fear. She wanted to question Emily about the existence of Claire Linson, about the truth behind this mysterious name. Emily, with a feigned look of surprise, looked at the will. She subtly furrowed her brows, as if trying to understand. "Oh, he prepared this," she said, her voice innocent, tinged with surprise. "He never told me about this." She held the will, turning it over and over, her face full of contemplation. "Perhaps there's something else here," Emily said, her voice soft, as if suggesting a solution. She led Lindsay to Mark's cabin, where the main safe had already been broken into, a matter the police were investigating but hadn't found the culprit for. The safe door was still wide open, revealing its emptiness inside. "There must be something else here that we haven't found," Emily repeated, her eyes quickly sweeping over the bottom of the safe. Lindsay was unaware that a tiny micro camera, hidden at the bottom of the safe, was silently recording their every gesture, every expression. Emily had placed it there long ago, waiting for this moment, an invisible trap waiting for its prey. Immediately after, an anonymous link was sent to all major news agencies, tabloid newspapers, and spread like wildfire on social media. The link led to a video. The video was filmed from the micro camera in Mark's safe. The video showed Lindsay trying to force Mark to sign a will when he was drunk. The images were so clear that they were undeniable. Lindsay was gripping Mark's hand, pressing a pen into his hand, and her voice echoed, full of urgency. "Sign it, Mark. Sign here. You won't regret it." Although the content of the will in the video was unclear, Lindsay's actions were enough to condemn her. Social media exploded. The hashtag number Lindsay the Gold Digger became a trend. Hateful, judgmental comments poured down on Lindsay like a storm. "She's truly manipulative. Doing anything for money. A wicked old fox." Lindsay was suspected of taking advantage of Mark when he was drunk, forcing him to sign documents, and possibly even being involved in his disappearance. Her life and reputation collapsed overnight, drowned by the wave of public outrage. She felt like a puppet on strings, pushed into a perfect trap she couldn't understand. Amidst the chaos and accusations, a cold question echoed in Lindsay's mind. Who truly orchestrated this play? Who was behind it all, silently controlling every step, every piece? Along with the timely appearance of the will and the video, a new fear emerged, a feeling that an invisible hand was manipulating the fate of everyone on this yacht. Amidst the stagnant investigation into Mark's disappearance, and Lindsay facing a fierce wave of public criticism, a shocking event occurred, shaking not only the luxurious yacht, but also global media. Mark, thought to be permanently lost on a deserted island, unexpectedly returned. He appeared on the deck early one morning, while mist still hung over the sea, still looking haggard after days of harsh survival, but his eyes gleamed with strange pride and confidence. "I'm back," he declared, his voice resounding, breaking the stillness of the dawn. The waves lapping against the hull seemed to harmonize with the rapid beats of astonished hearts. Immediately, a wave of chaos erupted. Media, police, journalists, and even the passengers on the yacht all rushed towards him. Camera flashes popped continuously like fireworks. Reporters' noisy questions jostled together, creating an unprecedented scene. Mark stood there, like a king returning from a battlefield, savoring every moment of attention, a slight triumphant smirk playing on his lips. Without letting anyone fully grasp the situation, Mark immediately held a press conference on the deck. He stood surrounded by cameras, his challenging gaze searching for Lindsay. She stood stunned in a corner, her face pale with surprise and shock, her heart seemingly stopped. Her whole body trembled, a feeling of helplessness and indignation surging within her. "I will sue you, Lindsay," Mark declared forcefully, his voice full of certainty and resentment echoing across the deck. "You forced me to sign a fake will when I was drunk, conspiring to usurp my assets. I have full evidence." He glared at Lindsay with contempt, as if she were merely a pawn in his game. Lindsay wanted to explain, to scream that it was all a misunderstanding, but her words were drowned out by the noise of the crowd and Mark's terrifying confidence. He fully believed he had exposed Emily and Lindsay, that he had won this game. His self-satisfaction was evident in every gesture, every glance, almost bordering on arrogance. "You thought I was dead? You thought Mark Linson had disappeared forever?" Mark suddenly raised his voice, his gaze sweeping across every face staring at him, particularly lingering on Emily. "No, it was just a play. A perfect drama I staged to expose the true faces of greedy people like you." He pulled a small USB stick from his pocket and plugged it into a large screen on the deck. "For the past 3 days, I haven't been dead. I've been on a deserted island not far from here, surviving on my own, observing everything. All your reactions, all your despicable schemes, have been recorded." A short video began to play, showing Mark covered in mud, with a scraggly beard, but his eyes full of self-satisfaction, his voice echoing. "I needed to know who would betray me. I needed to test Emily. She's trying to deceive me, but she doesn't know I'm much more cunning than she is. I recorded everything, from how I set up my tent, fished, to the thoughts in this electronic diary." Mark pointed to the screen, where lines from his diary appeared, revealing his plan. "Everything is going according to plan. Emily's panic, the suspicion of my close friends. It's all part of the play I staged to expose their true selves." He paused, looking directly at Emily, his voice triumphant. "And Emily, I've prepared one final test for you. I secretly transferred a large portion of my assets to a woman named Claire Linson a few months ago. I wanted to see if you truly loved me, or just wanted my assets. I left a decoy letter in my personal safe, vaguely mentioning a large sum of money and a shocking secret that would be revealed if someone found it. I believed that, with your greedy and curious nature, you would try to break in." Mark sneered, his eyes showing extreme self-satisfaction. "I calculated everything perfectly. Every piece was in my hand, every move according to the script I had laid out. You are all puppets in my play." But then, a lawyer invited by the police, who had been discreetly investigating Mark's accounts and documents all this time, stepped forward. He held a thick stack of documents in his hand, his face grim. The atmosphere on the deck suddenly became tense. Only the rustling of the sea breeze and the sparse clicks of cameras could be heard. The entire room fell silent, all eyes fixed on him. "Mr. Mark," the lawyer began, his voice calm but heavy with weight, "we have conducted thorough verification. All of your assets, including bank accounts, stocks, and real estate, were completely transferred 3 weeks ago." A small murmur arose, then silence again. The entire room held its breath, waiting. "And all of it was transferred under the name Claire Linson." Mark froze, He couldn't believe his ears. Everything seemed to spin, the space around him blurred. "No way!" he screamed, his voice hoarse with panic, devoid of any arrogance. "Claire Linson is my person. She must be my heir. I arranged everything." He trembled, looking at the lawyer, hoping for another explanation, a ray of light in the desperate darkness. "That Claire Linson account is not Lindsay's," the lawyer continued, his eyes full of sympathy but firm. "It does not belong to anyone we could link to you. According to the records we found, the legal owner of this Claire Linson account is a completely different person, and they have withdrawn all the money." Mark looked at Emily, who was standing not far away, with a completely blank stare, as if he was looking at a stranger. The self-satisfaction and pride he had earlier completely vanished, replaced by extreme fear. His plan, his belief that he was in control of everything, suddenly dissolved into nothingness. He realized he had been tricked, a spectacular deception he never expected. In the vast open sea, under the gaze of hundreds of people, Mark realized he had returned, only to witness his own downfall. As Mark's gaze met Emily's, an almost imperceptible smile flickered on her lips, cold and calculating. That smile, to Mark, was more terrifying than any accusation. It was the sign of a grim truth he was about to face, a truth long conspired. After the shocking press conference, Mark was led to a private room on the yacht, where the lawyer and police awaited to clarify everything. The bright overhead lights shone down, creating a suffocatingly tense atmosphere. Lindsay was also present, her eyes still bewildered, but now mixed with a hint of curiosity and suspicion. She felt a chill run down her spine as Emily entered last, her expression unusually calm, as if she were merely an outsider, completely unburdened. "Mr. Mark," the lawyer began, placing the thick stack of documents on the table, the rustling of papers echoing in the silent room. "We have thoroughly investigated Claire Linson, and the truth is, Claire Linson does not exist." Mark gasped, trying to utter something but failing. A cold drop of sweat trickled down his temple. He stared at Emily, his eyes full of disbelief, a faint plea for help flashing through them. "Ms. Emily here," the lawyer continued, turning to Emily with a respectful nod, "constructed this fake identity 8 months ago, from the moment she knew you intended to test her loyalty by creating a mystery heir." Mark felt as if a heavy stone was pressing on his chest. The air in the room seemed to thicken, making it hard for him to breathe. He had been spectacularly tricked, a deception he had, ironically, orchestrated himself. Emily stepped forward, her eyes now no longer concealing their sharpness and determination. A cold glint swept across her eyes, hinting at a past few knew about. "You thought you were clever creating a Claire Linson to test me, Mark? You thought I would be greedy and reveal my true nature?" Her voice was calm, but every word uttered was like a knife plunging into Mark's arrogance. "I knew everything. I used the very sparse information you provided about Claire to create a perfect identity. Fake financial records, addresses, credit history, all meticulously constructed, little by little." She paused, looking directly at Mark, who was slumped in his chair, his face pale and full of shame. "You thought you were in control of everything, didn't you? You thought you had staged a perfect play to expose me and Lindsay, but you didn't know that your very own Claire Linson had become the tool for me to take everything you possess." A slight, almost imperceptible smile flickered across Emily's lips, revealing the subtle satisfaction of a victor. Lindsay stood there, completely stunned. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. A sense of betrayal surged within her but at the same time, she couldn't help but feel an unwilling admiration for Emily. The woman Lindsay had once thought was naive, weak, could orchestrate such a sophisticated and cruel plan. A vague fear of Emily's true nature began to creep into Lindsay's mind. Mark had nothing left to say. His plan, his blind faith in his own intelligence, had all crumbled to dust. He had returned from the dead, only to face another death, the death of his career, his assets, and his self-respect. Extreme fear turned into emptiness, an indefinite void in his soul. He had lost everything. In the silent room, only Mark's heavy gasps and the soft hum of the air conditioning could be heard. He looked out the window, where the vast ocean still stretched, but now it was no longer a symbol of freedom, but of isolation, an abyss swallowing him. He had returned, but only as a shadow of himself, a man stripped bare, drowning in ultimate humiliation. Emily had won. A victory without guns, without bloodshed, but utterly destructive. Lindsay quietly left the room, leaving Mark in his own despair. She needed time to digest everything that had just happened, to reassemble the fragments of truth. This journey had revealed shocking secrets, complex conspiracies she had never imagined. And now, with Mark's downfall, another question arose in her mind, haunting and difficult to answer. What would Emily do next? And was she truly the person Lindsay once thought? Or was there another secret hidden beneath that calm exterior? Weeks after the shocking incident on the yacht, a press conference was held on the deck of the Serenity, now back in port and securely docked. The midday sun shone down, glittering on the blue sea, but the atmosphere on the yacht was strangely tense. Emily appeared, light, calm, with an elegant demeanor, and not a hint of worry or regret. She wore a pristine white dress, her silky hair flowing down, and offered an almost angelic smile, drawing all eyes to her. Mark, sitting in the front row, looked at her as if seeing a stranger, a ghost from his worst nightmare. His eyes were empty, filled with regret and despair, completely different from the arrogance of previous weeks. He had lost everything, and now he was facing the person who had stripped him of everything. Mid-press conference, as everyone was still murmuring, a video unexpectedly played on a large screen set up on the deck. The chatter subsided, replaced by curious silence. It was a scene of Emily sitting in her cabin, looking directly at the camera, her eyes sharp and resolute. Her voice echoed clearly, full of confidence and coldness, like an unapologetic confession, a final message to Mark and all those who had underestimated her. No need to be stronger. Just make them believe you are weaker. This statement was like a powerful blow to Mark's mind, making him tremble. He understood that Emily had known everything, had seen through all his schemes, and she had controlled him from the hour beginning, step by step, leading him into the perfect trap he had created himself. All his self-satisfaction, all his sophisticated plans became meaningless before Emily's intellect and coldness. When the video ended, the atmosphere on the yacht became heavy. Each of them was a pawn in Emily's game, and now each person's fate had been sealed. Mark looked up at Emily, his voice hoarse. Why? Why did you do this? Just because I tested you? Emily looked directly into his eyes, the smile still on her lips, but her deep eyes harboring an unpredictable pain and resentment. Test me, Mark. You call that a test? 10 years ago when you ruined my father's life, tearing my family apart just to buy the land you coveted. Do you remember? You turned me into a homeless child. Your loyalty test plan was just the last straw. This isn't revenge, Mark. This is justice. This is the price for everything you've caused. Her voice remained calm, but every word was like a knife plunging straight into Mark's heart. He recoiled, his face pale, realizing the horrifying truth he had forgotten or deliberately ignored. Luis quietly left the press conference. In his hand, he held a thick envelope, heavy with its contents. Inside was a blank check, with no amount written, accompanied by a small piece of paper with the words, "To open your new restaurant." Luis looked at the check, then back at Emily, who still stood there with her mysterious smile. She had compensated him openly and ironically, turning his dream into a gift from the one who had manipulated him. Ava sat silently in the back row, her eyes red and swollen. Tears streamed down her cheeks, ceaselessly. She had lost everything. The man she loved, Mark, her trust in friends, and even her own self-respect. She realized she was just a pawn in Emily's game, a rook used and discarded when no longer valuable. Jake helplessly looked at Mark, then at Emily. He clenched his fists, shaking his head in despair, unable to utter a word. Lindsay had completely collapsed, her reputation shattered. She sat there, her eyes vacant, staring into space, no longer aware of her surroundings. A final tear rolled down her cheek, marking the end of everything she had once believed. She was now just a shadow of herself, ruined by conspiracies she knew nothing about, unable to recover. On another yacht, far more luxurious than the Serenity, a splendid and modern yacht, Emily raised a champagne glass, looking out at the deep blue sea. The brilliant light of the late afternoon reflected on her glass, creating glittering sparks. The gentle waves lapped against the hull, along with the salty sea breeze caressing her hair. She smiled, a truly satisfied and triumphant smile, no longer mysterious or cold, just absolute contentment. However, a fleeting, almost imperceptible frown crossed her forehead, as if this victory also came with a price only she knew. Her voice echoed like a whisper to the audience, full of hidden meaning and authority, closing her perfect play. "I didn't win because I was lucky. I won because I was the only one who knew what game I was playing."